All right, it's 9 o'clock. We'll go ahead and get started, everybody. Before I introduce Pete, I'd like to just go over a few housekeeping procedures. We are recording this session today, so if you need to refer back to it or would like to share it with colleagues who are not able to join this morning, it will be available on our YouTube channel later this week. If you are not actively asking a question, we request that you stay on mute so there isn't any background noise interrupting the presentation. Button on your screen I'd like you all to avoid hitting. It's at the bottom. It's a rectangle with an up arrow. That's the share screen button. Please do not click that, as that will interrupt the presentation as well. If and when you have questions, you can either raise your hand, put it into the chat, or unmute yourself and jump in. And we will take a few questions at the end if necessary. If you have any technical issues, please put those into the chat and I'll do my best to help you through those. Just be aware that most of the time those technical issues stem from your own Wi-Fi connections. And finally, if anyone is dialed in via telephone today, please send me an email at mfrey@pgahq.com so we can get you your PDR credits for this morning. I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Mr. Pete Trenum. Pete is a longtime PGA of America golf member, and he is a past president of the section. As such, he is our de facto PGA section historian, and if you have not been to his website, Trenum Golf History, it's a treasure trove of information. We in the Philadelphia PGA section are extremely fortunate to have somebody like Pete doing all this research and logging all of these records for us. Most of the other sections have very incomplete records about everything from things as simple as their award winners or their presidents. We have a very complete history thanks to Pete's hard work. So with that, I'm going to, we'll start the presentation. Pete, thanks for joining us this morning.
You're welcome.
Just to get things started off, can you explain a little bit about the importance of the PGA Championship for the PGA of America as an association?
This is probably my toughest question of the morning, but I think the great thing about the PGA Championship is it gives us a chance once a year to explain to the golfers around the world who we are, that we're not the PGA Tour, we're the PGA of America, and the members of our organization teach the game of golf and manage the golf facilities around the United States, which are somewhere around 20,000 golf facilities, the day-to-day operation. And just to give you a little history, we were all one at one time, but in 1968 at the White Marsh at the IVB Classic, the players had a meeting and decided that they could run the tour better than the PGA of America could run the tour. So that caused a split up, and it was a pretty difficult one at first, but then Leo Frazier was elected president. Leo Frazier from Atlantic City was elected president of the PGA of America, and he decided that this was not good to have two warring factions, and he made peace. And so it created a separate division in the PGA of America for the players division, and so that they could run the tournaments, and the PGA officers would be on their board having a say in it. In 1975, though, there was a total split up of the PGA, a total divorce of the PGA of players and the PGA people that, like me, that ran the golf facilities. And so they still, in any divorce, is a settlement, and we, the PGA club pros, got to keep the Ryder Cup, which was not too big a deal at that time because Europe wasn't part of it, and it wasn't, it usually lost money. And so we kept the Ryder Cup and the PGA Championship, and a thing called the World Series of Golf, which was played at Firestone every year, and the players got to run the tour basically. And the part of that is they all remained as members of the PGA of America. So we have a PGA championship coming up at Aronimink in May, and as part of the field, 20 of our best players will be competing in that tournament. But this is a one time with sort of, you can, most golfers don't know there's a difference between the PGA of America and the PGA Tour. And this is one chance to explain the difference to the world of golf.
Yeah, that's something that we deal with on a daily basis here at the section office, and we're really thrilled to have the championship here in our section, so that we can tell our story in a better way and to more people. Cassie, can you go to the next slide, please? So Pete, just kind of big picture here and the influence the section's had. The section hosted 3 PGA championships in just 5 years. What role did Ed Dudley play in making that happen?
Well, the Philadelphia PGA has been very fortunate to have a lot of great golf professionals pass through here. And some of them grew up here, but many of them came and were here for a number of years. Ed Dudley is one of those. Ed Dudley arrived in 1929 as the pro at Concord Country Club. And when he arrived, he was a member of the 1929 Ryder Cup team. That's hard to picture today, that a man arrives as a pro at a club in the Philadelphia section and he's a member of the Ryder Cup team. But he grew up in Georgia. He was from Savannah. He's a year older than Bobby Jones. He was born in 1901, and he went through Oklahoma, and then he was in California, and then he quit his job in California to play the tour in 1928, and he played well, but he didn't make enough money to an interesting thing is a guy named Ralph Hutchison was his caddy, who wound up being the pro at Saucon Valley. And he came to Concord in 1929 as the pro with Ralph Hutchison with him as his assistant. And he just played very well. He won the Los Angeles Open, he won the Western Open, and this was a different world. And he played the winter tour all in the winter, and he was at Concord, except he was always away for the major summer tournaments. And in 1933, Augusta National opened, and Dudley knew Bobby Jones from, they didn't have junior golf in those days probably, but they had amateur golf in Georgia, and they were contemporaries. And Jones hired him as the head pro at Augusta National, the first head pro at Augusta National. And then the next year, Dudley moved from Concord Country Club to the Philadelphia Country Club. So now he was the pro, winter pro at Augusta and a summer pro at Augusta. And he was playing the PGA Tour when he wasn't at those two clubs. And he became president of the Philadelphia PGA, and he was the tournament chairman on the PGA Tour. So 7 years he was president of the Philadelphia PGA from 1934 to 1941. He was president of the Philadelphia PGA, and he knew everybody in golf between Augusta National, playing the tour, Philadelphia Country Club. He knew everyone in golf. So I don't know for a fact, but it had to be a big part of the fact the first PGA championship that we hosted was at Shawnee, and Shawnee has a great history. So they had 20 Shawnee Opens before we had a PGA championship there, between 1912 and 1937. And there were some missed years because of World War I and the Great Depression. But anyway, Dudley had to have a lot to do with the PGA coming to Shawnee. I'm sure he won 2 Shawnee Opens himself. And so we hosted 3 PGAs in 5 years, Shawnee in 1938, and Hershey, 1940, and Seaview, 1942. And along with that, the Philadelphia Country Club hosted the U.S. Open in 1939, where Ed Dudley was the pro. So there we are with 4 major championships in 5 years right here in the section. A little bit, not right in Philadelphia, of course, but between the Pocono Mountains and Hershey and Seaview on the Atlantic coast. And then but all part of the Philadelphia PGA. And so probably the next question is, why Shawnee? Why was the first one at Shawnee? So anyway, Shawnee has a great history. Worthington family made a lot of money in water pumps based in New York City. And Mr. Worthington's son, he was involved in the company too, and very important. And sometime in the early 1900s, Charles Worthington bought 8,000 acres in the Pocono Mountains, and had a summer home there. And he went to Great Britain and found golf, and so he had a rudimentary 9-hole course near his home there. And then about 1910, he decided to build a hotel and a real golf course. So his boys were playing golf, and they'd met A.W. Tillinghast, who was a good player from Philadelphia. So they invited Tillinghast to design their golf course. There was going to be a real 18-hole golf course. And so Tillinghast designed the course, and they opened the hotel, which they called the Buckwood Inn, because from the front porch you could see the Buckwood Mountains over in New Jersey, where it's actually where Mr. Worthington's land spread all the way across the Delaware into New Jersey. And there's actually a Worthington State Park over there, the land he donated to New Jersey. So they ran 20 Shawnee Opens. At the first Shawnee Open, at the closing ceremonies, awarding the trophies and all that, Mr. Worthington said the pros should have a national organization. And then the next year was really a famous Shawnee Open, when Harry Vardon and Ted Ray were here from England to play in the U.S. Open in Boston. They were there to play in the tournament, and our Johnny McDermott won that tournament. And McDermott, he hits the picture you're seeing there on the right is the PGA in 38, and there's the hotel on the left, and there's Mr. Worthington you can see on the left. And so anyway, they played that tournament, and McDermott, they played 36 holes 2 days in a row for 72 holes. And the second day, McDermott came from 6 shots behind to win by 8. And Vardon and Ray were probably not at the top of their game yet, but they had just gotten the United States and been here a couple of weeks. But anyway, that was really a famous tournament because McDermott made a speech which wasn't taken well by the public, and thought that he was being a little rude to our guests, saying that not to worry, that the U.S. Open trophy was going to stay in the United States. But so anyway, people came down kind of hard on McDermott, and the USGA even threatened to keep him out from defending his title, which he had won 2 years in a row at the U.S. Open. So, but anyway, things settled down enough so that McDermott played. But anyway, we had 20 Shawnee Opens. So I don't know exact history, but the PGA decided to hold their championship in 1938 at Shawnee. And of course, those days, the host club or the host had to put up the purse. A little different from now. So Mr. Worthington spent $20,000 hosting 1938 PGA championship, $10,000 on the purse and $10,000 more on the facility. And by then, Leo Deagle, who had won the PGA championship in 1928 and 1929, was the pro at Philmont, and he was the tournament chairman for the Philadelphia PGA. And Deagle knew what a PGA championship should be like. So Deagle formed a committee of 25 fellow PGA section members, and they made weekly trips to Shawnee to make sure that everything was just right with the boundary markers, the hazard markers, and the condition of the rough and the fairways, the greens, and the scoreboard. And, you know, being golf pros, you know, all the things that go into running a tournament, and especially the national tournament. And Deagle was going to make sure that everything was just right. So when they played the tournament, it was match play in those years. And it turned out that one of the shortest men in the field and one of the shortest drivers, Paul Runyon, met Sam Snead in the finals. And most of the first two rounds were 18 holes, and all the matches were 36 holes with it. You know, 64 players qualified, played 36 holes qualifying. And so it came down to the final of Runyon playing Snead, probably the longest driver in the tournament against the shortest driver in the tournament. But Deagle was on his game. He had won the tournament in 1934, and he was one of the best players on the tour, one of the top money winners. And he played with a sway in order to get some power. Nowadays with our equipment and everything, smaller people can hit the ball a mile. Well, it seems like a mile anyway, but Runyon swayed back and then swayed forward in order to get much body as he could into the ball. But that day he was on his game. And the first 18 holes, Runyon shot 5 under par. And of course, the newspaper said par was probably about 69 because the course was so baked out from the sun that the ball was traveling pretty far. And of course, Snead's drives were 30, 40, 50 yards past Runyon's on every hole. And but after the morning round, Runyon was 5 under par. Snead was even par, and Runyon was 5 up. In the afternoon, it was more of the same. Runyon was 3 under when the match ended, and he lost 1 hole. He lost a par 5 hole, the 24th in the afternoon, the 24th hole of the day, with a birdie 4 that Snead made when he reached a par 5 and 2. Other than that, it was all Runyon. So the purse was $10,000, and Runyon's check was $1,100. But anyway, to back up a little bit, the PGA magazine had articles in it leading up to the tournament, called it the cradle of the PGA, and the PGA was returning to its birthplace. And that was all because of Mr. Warren's insistence or influence or hope that the PGA, the pros would form a national organization. Actually, during that 1913 Shawnee Open, Mr. Worthington written it up on a piece of paper, his wishes about the pros forming a national organization, and the letter was read at dinner during that tournament. So it was always like the pros, the older pros that had been around a while, they all knew that this was like where it all began. And so some of them, they called it the cradle of the PGA or the birthplace of the PGA. So that was a good reason to host our first one at Shawnee.
That's really cool. Cassie, can you go to the next slide, please? So then we wrap up in 2 years. They come back for Hershey, right?
Yes. Now we're on to Hershey. Now Milton Hershey's the man who started the Hershey Chocolate Company. He liked golf, and he had what you see in the background had been his home. They turned it into a clubhouse when they built the golf course. And I don't know any of you are old enough to have played it when the ninth hole finished right in front of the clubhouse there with the par 3, and still all wrapped around that. But the PGA championship came back to the section in 1940. One of the interesting things, Henry Pickard was the pro at Hershey, but he was also the defending champion. He had won the championship the year before, and maybe that had some influence on Mr. Hershey wanting to host the tournament. Probably did. That his pro was the defending champion. So here it was back in the section 1940. They played again. It's a match play, and it the first 2 days were 18 holes, and they were all 36 holes. So we came to the semifinals, which was played on was played on a Saturday, and the first Saturday in September, and they had so much rain that they only got in 18 holes. So now that second 18 had to be played on Sunday, and that wasn't going to work to play the second 18 on Sunday and then play a 36-hole match later on Sunday. So the finals was moved to Monday, which was Labor Day. So anyway, they finished the second half of the semifinals on Sunday, and then they played on Labor Day. They played the 36-hole finals with Byron Nelson and Sam Snead in the finals. And ironically, Nelson had been the pro at Reading Country Club only a few miles away the year before, in 39, and now he was back here, and he won. He beat Snead, one down. Great match. And you can see the picture there, and Mr. Hershey's on the right, and that's Tom Walsh, the president of the PGA, there with the Wanamaker Trophy, and it was a great tournament. Really, you had great players finished, in the final. Mr. Hershey was lucky, and but Milton Hershey always. He wanted his pro out on the tour playing the big tournament, carrying the Hershey Foods banner. So anyway, part of the story is that going on from there was that Henry Pickard had 4 boys, and his wife wanted him to be home more because he played the winter tour. He played everything in the winter, and then he played all the big tournaments in the summer. And also he was getting arthritis in his hands, and it was becoming a problem. So at the end of 1941, Henry Pickard left Hershey, and he recommended Ben Hogan, who he'd always been a big believer and a big sponsor of Hogan. And he actually offered him money once to keep playing the tour, that he believed in him that much, that if he ever needed money, just ask him he'd help out. And then Hogan said that gave him enough confidence to keep going. So anyway, he recommended Hogan, and Henry Pickard bought a farm in Oklahoma. It turned out he wasn't a farmer. That didn't work out. So then he took a pro job in Oklahoma. Then he came back as a pro in the section at the Country Club of Harrisburg, but now Hogan took over as the pro at Hershey and carried the Hershey food banner. And it's interesting that Milton Hershey died during Hogan's time sometime, and the Ski Regal used to like to tell a story about Ben Hogan won the 1951 U.S. Open, and that day that he won, he was fired. And what it really was, his contract ran out at Hershey on the Saturday that he won the 1951 U.S. Open, and so he was no longer the pro at Hershey. But Ski always thought that was great. He won the U.S. Open, lost his job. So anyway, but Hershey had a 10-year. Hogan had a 10-year run there with Mr. Hershey at Hershey Country Club, and carried the Hershey Foods banner in style. And I met a guy there once playing in the Pennsylvania Open who had caddied for Hogan and shagged balls for him at Hershey. And he said that he would shag balls for Hogan, and then Mr. Hershey would come, and some days they'd play a fast 18 holes and play through everybody on the course. And then Mr. Hershey go back to work, and Hogan go back to hitting balls. So
it's pretty cool history with Hershey, and it wasn't their their last PGA of America championship. The PGA Professional Championship there was, I think, there in 2011.
That was, yes, 2011. That was our 90th year as a section.
Mm-hmm.
That was our 90th anniversary. We played the course. There's a second course there, designed by our George Fazio, and so it's a great place to hold something like the PGA Professional Championship, because you got 36 holes right there on site where the qualifying and all.
That's awesome. Cassie, can you please go to the next slide? So 1942, we're in the shadow of war, but we're at Seaview. So can you tell us a little bit about the unique course setup?
Okay. Well, Seaview, 1942, a lot of you have played the Pines 18 and the Bay 18. Well, at that time, they hadn't completed the Pines. They only had 9 holes completed. So it might have been depression or whatever, but somehow there was only 9 holes done. So for the tournament, they played the back 9 on the Bay course, and they played the 9 holes that was open, which I think is the front 9, on the Pines course, and that was the 18 holes for the PGA Championship. So because of World War II, it just started. They cut the field down. Like usually they had 100 players would come and qualify for 64 places, but they cut it down to 32 places, and so the tournament would be one round shorter. And so they qualified on the Bay course and the 9 holes on the Pines course. One of the interesting things is the day before the tournament, Ben Hogan hit so many golf balls. Maybe the ground was hard. He hurt his wrist, and he needed an X-ray on his wrist. So Fred Corcoran, who was running the PGA Tour, and he was controversial because they felt like he played favorites. Some of the average players felt like he played favorites among the stars. But anyway, he pushed Hogan's time back so he could have time to go get an X-ray on his wrist, see if he was able to play. So anyway, they played, and Ed Dudley actually led the qualifying the first day, 36. He shot 66. But, he didn't wind up winning the medal, but he was close to the top. So they played, and Jim Ternisa, who you see here in his Army uniform, he was stationed at Fort Dix. He is one of the 7 Ternisa brothers who all were great golfers. He was at Fort Dix, and the Army told him he could play in the tournament, but he had to donate whatever he won to the Army Relief Fund. So Ternisa played, and he wore his uniform every round. So it came down to, it was Sam Snead and Jim Ternisa going to play in the finals. And as you might expect, a lot of the Army guys were down there cheering on their fellow Army man. And a lot of them didn't know anything about golf. And some people said that Ternisa had never had a bad lie all week. And when his ball went in the rough, but there were no ropes for going to fairways or anything at that time. They were just roped off the greens to protect the greens. But otherwise, the gallery was managed by marshals the best they could. So anyway, the night before the final, Sam Snead went to Dudley, who is now president of the PGA of America, and still a great player, obviously. He'd been elected in the fall of 1941. So he said, you gotta help me out with this, with the Ternisa's gallery. He says, you gotta get control of them. And Dudley told Snead, he says, you're on your own. I'm not fighting the U.S. Army. So anyway, but Snead won. It was a tight match, actually, and Snead actually chipped in a hole not far from the end and prevailed, and finally won a major championship, the PGA champion in 1942. And Snead with a Navy hat on. 2 days later, Snead was in the Navy. Actually, the Navy pushed back his induction by a week or so so he could play in the PGA. So there he is wearing his Navy hat. And it was a great spectacle. And actually that night, the Chamber of Commerce, Atlantic City, and met and actually extended an invitation to the PGA to come back the next year. But there was no PGA championship in 1943 because of the war. But it worked out well. It's kind of a weird combination of holes. But and they played another thing I should say, they played the matches, or the later matches anyway, they played the Bay 9 second because there was more room for the gallery. That was the explanation of why there were less trees and more space for the gallery to be around and be able to see what was going on. So
Pete, can you tell us a little bit about the way the purse could be paid out between cash and
they
war bonds?
decided, well, that's right. That tournament, all the proceeds from that tournament went to the Army and Navy relief funds like charities. And so by 1942 on the PGA Tour, they decided they wanted to support the wartime effort any way they could. So you could either, when you're winning, you could either take a war bond or you could take cash. Of course, a lot of pros needed the cash, I'm sure, but for this tournament in particular, this was a $10,000 tournament, but actually it was if you bought a war bond, if you bought a $1,000 war bond, you paid $750 for it. In 10 years, you were guaranteed to be worth $10,000, to be worth $1,000. If you paid $750 at 10 years, you could cash it in for $1,000, or you could cash it in earlier for less money. So some players would take the money in cash, and of course they took it in a war bond. It was 25% less, and Nelson took a lot of his in war bonds. He was winning so much he didn't need all that cash. But in that tournament, Snead took his because he's going to the Navy. He didn't need $1,500 in cash. He took he didn't need $2,000 in cash. He took a $1,500 war bond, and of course, Ternisa took his in cash because the Army wanted cash. He took $750 was his prize. So that was an interesting story, and that was all through the war years they did that, and yet you had a choice when you played of a war bond or cash.
How times have changed. I don't know how many touring professionals nowadays would take war bonds over cash.
Even though they have a lot of money.
Yes, exactly. All right. So, Cassie, let's skip ahead to the next slide. So now we're at Lanark in the 50s. And this was a PGA championship, a first, so to speak.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about Marty Lyons and his role?
Now you see Marty Lyons here. He followed Ed Dudley as the president of the Philadelphia PGA, and he was president 7 years. That's hard to believe nowadays. And then Dudley was president 7 years. Then Marty Lyons was president 7 years. And Marty Lyons, he was a great promoter. I mean, a great talker. And he always went to the PGA National Golf Club in Dunedin in the wintertime, and he actually is one of the ones that talked the PGA of America into having a PGA National Golf Club. And he and Jimmy D'Angelo from Philadelphia were assigned by Dudley to find a spot, and they found Dunedin, and they made a deal because they'd gone through the Depression, and now was into World War II. They made a deal with Dunedin. They leased Dunedin, the PGA leased Dunedin for $1 a year for 100 years. And the Lyons and D'Angelo went back to the national meeting with pictures and everything and sold it to the delegates. And that was the easy part. The problem was the course was so run down. Now the PGA had to run this golf course, and so every section got assessed some money to help run the National Golf Club. And some of those sections that out in California or the Pacific Northwest, they weren't sure we're spending money on this place we may never see. But anyway, he was a great promoter. So he got the idea that his club should host the National PGA Championship. So he sold his club on doing that. Then he went to the PGA of America, and he sold the PGA on hosting the tournament. So they got the tournament for 1958. So in 1957, Marty Lyons and some of the members from Lanark decided to make a trip to Ohio to Miami Valley to see what running a PGA championship entailed, what it was all about. So they spent the whole tournament out there. And when they came back, Marty Lyons sat down, he wrote a letter to the PGA of America. And he said, the essence of it was I've just attended a great PGA championship with a great purse and a lot of great players. But some of the best players didn't play because it took so much golf. And the tournament was run. It couldn't have been run any better, but it lost money. And if we could change the tournament over to stroke play, more PGA members could play. First of all, instead of about 100 going there to qualify for the match play, 150 or so could play. That would be great. Then, if we had a stroke play, you could guarantee that the best players were still around on Saturday and Sunday. They didn't get knocked out in the match play. So there's a possibility that television might be interested in televising the tournament. So then he went to the national meeting, and he had gone and sold the delegates on changing the format from match play to stroke play. And so they converted that. So now everybody could see there's more people could play. And so then it just happened that John Facenda, who many of you know is the voice of an NFL Films, he was a Philadelphia newsman, and he was the anchor man on the KYW television evening news. And he was a member at Lanark and Bala. And Marty Lyons went to John Facenda and talked to him about maybe he could see if CBS would be interested in televising the tournament, because they were doing a few tournaments like the Masters and some others, but they'd never done the PGA because he couldn't tell who might be in the finals, and might be two people that the public never heard of. So anyway, Facenda went to the CBS and sold them on televising the tournament. So right there in that studio, a guy named Frank Shirkinian was promoting, managing the news shows, the evening and the 11 o'clock news. So CBS assigned Frank Shirkinian to produce this tournament. And actually, Jack Whitaker was there he was the sportsman for KYW. So that week, Jack Whitaker did the interviews for the news shows, and Frank Shirkinian ran the tournament. They televised the last three holes each day on Saturday and Sunday. It televised the last three holes, or about 40 minutes, and the closing ceremony, which you see on the left there. And that's Harold Sargent, the president of the PGA, with Dow Finsterwald, and the Wanamaker Trophy and the check. So it was a huge success. And for the first time in many years, the tournament made money. It didn't lose money like it had been. And that was it. And so we went on from there. So, but Marty Lyons was one of those great golf pros that could, promote the game and teach the game. One of his students, Dot Porter, won the National Women's Amateur, and he started Buddy Marucci, and he just was a very successful golf pro, and like many of you are. And it's a great story. He started as a caddy at Lanark, and he almost died. He died at our 1968 fall spring meeting out of the front table, and back in harness as a national director.
Goodness, I did not know that.
Yeah, right. That was such a shock.
I bet. Holy mackerel. All right. So we're in the television era now.
Right.
So let's fast forward a couple of years. Cassie, let's go to the next slide, please. We're at Aronimink.
Right.
So the tournament wasn't really supposed to be at Aronimink. Is that right?
Yes. How do we get to Aronimink? But anyway, The tournament was supposed to be at Brentwood Country Club in Los Angeles. And the PGA of America had this Caucasian rule that you had to be a Caucasian to be a PGA member. So anyway, the tournament was supposed to be 1962 at Brentwood. And there's a guy named Bill Spiller, a black pro. He from Texas, and he wound up in California. He went to California, and he worked as a red cap. He was actually a school teacher in Texas, but he moved to California and worked as a red cap at the train station because he could make more money as a red cap at the train station than he could teach in school in Texas, because they gave him the worst jobs in Texas. So anyway, the poor schools. And so anyway, he learned to play golf. Now he work at night as a red cap and play golf in the daytime, so he got to be pretty good. And then about soon after that, Charlie Sifford, who had been playing golf at Cobbs Creek in Philadelphia, he got a job as a chauffeur with a guy named Eddie Mallory, whose wife was a great entertainer, and they used to go to California in the wintertime so that Eddie and Mallory could play golf. And Sifford would teach Mallory how to play golf, and they'd play golf. And so Sifford's out there, and so somehow a guy named Stanley Moss, who knew nothing about golf, was playing tennis at Hillcrest Country Club, and Spiller was caddying at Hillcrest at times to make some extra money. And some of the members of Hillcrest told Stanley Moss, there's a couple of black players out here in California that can really play golf, and the PGA Championship's coming here, and they can't play in the tournament because of this Caucasian rule that the PGA has. So Stanley Moss, even though he didn't know anything about golf, he knew something about what was right and what was wrong. So he went to the PGA, and he told the PGA of America, your tournament's not going to be in California unless Charlie Sifford and Bill Spiller are in it, especially Charlie Sifford. And they said, well, they don't have any credentials. They don't have, they haven't won enough whatever to qualify. And he says, I don't care. That doesn't make any difference to me. So anyway, now the Southern California PGA, which isn't known too much, they were losing their tournament. So 1960 meeting of the PGA of America, the Southern California section put up a proposal that they take out the Caucasian rule from the PGA bylaws, but it failed. So anyway, the PGA of America is looking for a place to hold the tournament, and somehow they found Aronimink. I'm not sure who stepped up, because Joe Capello, the pro at Aronimink, was not a politician. I'm not sure exactly how they found Aronimink, but they came and checked out Aronimink and figured out that this place is capable of holding the tournament. So they moved the tournament, the 62 tournament, to Aronimink. And actually in the 61 fall meeting of the PGA of America, the Caucasian rule came up again. And I don't know who put it on the agenda. Maybe the board of directors did, but it passed. And maybe the lawyers told him, you got to get this thing out of your bylaws, because it's never going to hold up in court. You're going to be in lawsuits. So anyway, but 61 was too late for Sifford to play in the PGA Championship, because he didn't have any credentials for having won anything on the PGA Tour and no status. So the tournament was played, and it's kind of interesting. The British Open was played. The tournament was played in July, middle of July, third week of July. The British Open was played in the middle of July. The British Open ended on a Friday with 36 holes. And then the PGA Championship started the next Thursday. So it theoretically gave pros a chance to get back and play in the PGA Championship. But so Gary Player, he wasn't playing very well. He missed the cut at the British Open. So he came back, and he was having a hooking problem. So he actually took a lesson from Joe Capello, the pro at agronomy. Ted McKenzie told me this because Ted was in his first year as the assistant at agronomy. And that's why I know it happened, because I was in my first year as an assistant at Philadelphia Country Club along with Tim DeBoffrey. And so the end result was that player was having such a hooking problem. He drove with his 4-wood, which would hook less. It was easier to keep it in play. And he only used his driver on a few holes during the whole 72, all the 72 holes. And he got it around the golf course. And I think the winning score was 278, 2 under par. And he kept the ball in play and made the putts. And anyway, but it just happened soon after that. J.A. Bear and Lionel Bear, we had two all-star golf matches at Philadelphia Country Club that summer, right? Not long after the PGA Championship. Sam Snead played Bob Goulby partly it was because Snead had lost the U.S. Open dramatically in 1939. That's Philadelphia Country Club Spring Mill course by making an 8 on the last hole. So it was great television to bring Snead back, and he played Goulby. And the A. Bear brothers played each other the day before. They filmed 2 matches there, and I was having dinner with the A. Bear brothers the night before they played, and they hadn't been long since they got back from, and I don't know if they played in the British Open or not, but the players in general felt like, agronomy, God, that place is not that difficult. Doesn't have any out of bounds. There's no water hazards. Why weren't the scores lower? They just felt like, the best players were all tired out from playing the British Open, and they should have shot a lot better scores there, because actually, you younger guys don't know that there's a water hazard at the front left of the 10th green now, but that wasn't there in '62. That was just a bunker, and the water hazard on the 17th hole is now right up against the green, and that was not like that in '62. The course it appeared pretty easy. It was like just about 7,000 yards, but the game has certainly changed. And they had some AT&T tournaments there a few years ago, and I went over to watch. The first hole used to be, for us normal golfers, about driving a 4-wood, and somebody like Tony Perlow, who was the longest driver in our section, it might be a drive on a 3-iron or maybe a drive on a 4-iron. God, now they all hit pitching wedges to that green. So it's going to be interesting. They have added some length to agronomic. I think they've added a couple hundred yards or so, but there just isn't much place to go. It's going to be interesting in May to see what the scores are like. And of course, Kerry Haig is very kind, I guess, and with the pros. He doesn't beat them up, and they appreciate that. He sets it up difficult, but not unreasonable. So what will the winning score be? When I can't remember what the scores were when they played the AT&Ts there, but I think Rose won one. I think it was around 270.
Yeah, I think they were well under par.
Yeah, so it will be interesting, as major championships are. So here we are, looking forward to our next hosting of the PGA of America Championship, and what 20 players from the PGA of America are going to qualify next month for the national championship. I hope it's somebody from Philadelphia works their way into that. It'd be nice for everybody. So
we do too. Yeah, it'd be fantastic if one of our professionals qualified, and as in relation to that, Art Wall had a pretty good finish at around in '62, right?
Yeah, he finished 23rd. I mean, Art Wall was very capable. He's capable of winning the tournament, but but used to be a lot of club pros played. A lot of club pros, like just at Hershey, for instance, there were 10 in total section members played at Hershey. 7 qualified. And Snead was exempt. See, Snead was the pro at Shawnee, which a lot of people don't know. He was the playing pro from Shawnee, from 1940 to till the war ended. And then he went to became the head pro back at the Greenbrier, where he had worked as an assistant. And but the guy was a pro at Philmont. And anyway, we had Snead was exempt, and Pickard was exempt as the defending champion. And anyway, we had 7 qualifiers, and so for some years the section champion got in. And they did away with that after a while, and then there was local qualifying was around 1968. I think we had some spots, and that was the end of that. And then we went to having the PGA Club Professional Championship, which was something Leo Frazier thought up, so the Club Pro could have their own championship. It was called the Club Pro Championship at one time, and a certain number from that tournament got in, which was more equitable because some sections had a lot more good players than others, and so you qualified on a national basis instead of a local basis. So it was better in general for all the PGA Club Pros. So.
Well, that was very informative, Pete. I think that was fantastic. This is just a slide here that can show you the purse growth just from the championships that the Philly sections hosted. Now, if you look at the bottom there, our expected purse this year is almost $20 million. So things have changed a little bit in about 100 years, right?
Yeah. Money in golf, yes. But I hope some can trickle down to the Club Pros.
We do too, yes. So let's go ahead and open it up to questions. If anyone has anything, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. Let's see here. Thank you. Okay, if there aren't any questions, I would like to just remind everybody that PGA Championship will be at Aronimink here again this year, May 11th through 17th. As PGA professionals, you're all welcome to attend. You get access for free. You can bring in a spouse. You can bring in your parents. You can bring in your in-laws for free. If you don't bring in your spouse, you can bring in a guest. If you have questions about the attendance policy, please reach out to the section office and we can help you through that. We do ask that you pre-register your tickets. You will still be able to go to will call and walk in if you don't, but they do ask that you pre-register just so we can get a better idea how many PGA members will be in attendance. If you haven't been to a PGA Championship in a while or a PGA of America event, PGA members have their own hospitality area, which is fantastic. So if you want to get in from the elements, you're more than welcome. Our PGA member hospitality this year will be between holes number 1 and 2. We'll have a nice view of the approach on number 1. We'll be able to see the green and the approach on number 2 as well. On Friday of PGA Champ Week, we will be hosting a reception in the PGA member hospitality tent for all PGA members, whether it be section or folks from around the country. So please come. We'd love to see you. And the last thing I will mention, the PGA of America is running its PGA Hope Secretaries Cup the Monday of PGA Championship Week at Chester Valley. So if you're not familiar with what that event is, it's an event for our veterans program, PGA Hope Helping Our Patriots Everywhere, where 12 teams from around the country, which consist of 4 veterans and 1 PGA professional, will come to compete for the Secretaries Cup. And we have a local team being represented by our chapter at Five Ponds that will be competing. So if you have any interest in coming to support our military veterans, we will be at Chester Valley on May 11th. You can find out more information on our website or by calling the section office. thank you so much, Pete, for your time today. And we really appreciate everyone joining.
You're welcome. It's a privilege to talk to everybody. I wish I knew every one of you out there. It'd be nice.
Thank you. Okay. We'll stop the recording.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you.